Republican frontrunner Donald Trump has triggered alarm with comments he made at a rally yesterday. Trump outlining a scenario in which he said he would encourage Russia to attack NATO allies he thinks aren't spending enough on their own defense. The CBC's Albert De La Talla has that story.
There is strong reaction from the White House and from NATO itself. It's in relation to a campaign rally by Donald Trump in South Carolina yesterday. Speaking to his supporters, he criticized the mental state of President Joe Biden following that special counsel's report on Biden's handling of classified documents. Then he turned to the subject of NATO and Russia. He recounted apparent interactions he had with world leaders while in office. Here's more from Trump.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, "Well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us?" I said, "You didn't pay? You're delinquent?" He said, "Yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills." And the money came flowing in.
As you heard, the president said he would not protect a NATO country from Russian attack if they didn't pay their fair share toward defense. That's despite the NATO treaty containing a provision guaranteeing mutual defense of a member state if attacked. Trump has long been a critic of NATO and repeatedly threatened to pull out during his time as commander-in-chief. Meanwhile, NATO released a statement following Trump's comments at that rally. It reads, quote, "Any suggestion that allies will not defend each other undermines all of our security, including that of the U.S., and puts American and European soldiers at increased risk." White House spokesperson Andrew Bates, he condemned Trump's words too, writing, quote, "Encouraging invasions of our closest allies by murderous regimes is appalling and unhinged, and it endangers American national security, global stability, and our economy at home." Others are noting a fundamental inaccuracy in Trump's words. NATO has a target for each member country to spend 2% of GDP on defense. That's not binding, and there aren't bills per se from NATO that countries are failing to pay. A political science professor from Stanford University, Michael McFaul, he wrote on X, quote, "This is crazy," and 8 years later, Trump shows that he still doesn't understand how NATO works. It's not a protection racket. They don't pay us, as in the U.S., to protect them. Albert De La Talla, CBC News, Toronto.
For more, we're joined by Timothy Naftali. He's a presidential historian as well as a senior research scholar at the Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. And he joins us from New York today. Thanks so much for taking the time.
My pleasure, Linda.
I wanted to start with sort of the news of the day. Former President Donald Trump's comments at a rally recently saying that he would, quote, encourage Russia to do whatever it wanted to NATO members that didn't spend enough on defense. What is your reaction to hearing these kinds of comments coming from the former president?
Well, I mean, besides being performative, they're a reminder that Donald Trump, should he become president again, will make an already very difficult, very dangerous situation in Europe worse. Keep in mind that if Russia were to do something to any country in NATO, by the terms of the NATO treaty, the United States would be at war with Russia.
So what's he trying to do here then by saying this?
It's performative. He likes applause. He hates NATO. We know that. The memoirs that came out after the Trump administration made clear what he actually thinks of NATO. And he has a peculiar fondness for Vladimir Putin, as do many of his supporters.
Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit here, and we're going to talk a little bit about Joe Biden. What should have been essentially a good week for him. He was not charged criminally by special counsel Robert Hur for taking classified documents in 2017. But at the same time and almost in the same breath, he was described as well-meaning, elderly with a poor memory. So not a great look. What does this do you think, for his chances of re-election?
Well, Robert Hur's report was devastating. Robert Hur, for whatever reason, went to unusual lengths to try to document that Joe Biden's mental faculties have deteriorated since 2017. he made this case in order to explain why he wasn't going to indict the current president. Well, this has raised enormous concerns among Democrats. This is not just an issue of giving more ammunition to Republicans. And so the president himself made a strategic error out of anger. And you should never start a press conference out of anger. He appeared before the cameras, and in an effort to show that his mind was fine, that his memory was strong, that he was fit for the job, he seemed angry, which never is a good look, and then he flubbed, made a couple of flubs. So this was not a good week because it raised his weakness. His, if you will, his essential kryptonite is the issue of his age. That is his weakness. Donald Trump's essential weakness, of course, is his instability, his anger, his desire for revenge. This was a very tough week for Joe Biden.
And you said in there, for whatever reason, there's been a lot made about that reason. Of course, special counsel was a Republican chief attorney for the state of Maryland. He was appointed by Trump here. How much do you think that these comments were politically motivated?
Well, Linda, that's a really tough question. And I said for whatever reason, because I'm not a lawyer, I'm a historian. I read this report. I read the heart of it, and it seemed to me that he engaged in an unusual effort. That he quoted from more documents than he needed to. That he took advantage of the fact that he listened to the recordings of Joe Biden with Joe Biden's ghostwriter in 2017, and used them to an extent really unnecessary to make the case for not prosecuting the president. So my sense was that Robert Hur did not want to be James Comey in the summer of 2016, who seemed to be too helpful to Hillary Clinton in an election year. But in order to do that, he took a swipe at the president, and he did it with such force that one begins to wonder his own personal motives.
And, when we look at this, I only have about 30 seconds left, but, we've presumably, if both of these men, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, go forward becoming the nominees here, we'd have two of the oldest presidential candidates in history. What do you think that does to the electorate and to things like voter engagement going forward?
Well, I think part of the problem for young people is a sense that they're never going to get a chance. You have the last of the baby boomers and the Gen Xers taking these spots. But I think there's a graver challenge here, and that's vitality. I think as our societies age, what we assumed a person of 60 or 70 could do, those assumptions are changing. The challenge in the case of this campaign is that Joe Biden seems frail, and Donald Trump represents a very strong threat. And will you be able to encourage young people who do not like Donald Trump to make the effort to vote for a man who is like a grandfather, but a grandfather who's not having his best days?
Presidential historian Timothy Naftali, thank you for joining us to make sense of all of this.